Hey friend, do you love the smell of books? Maybe you absolutely delight in the sound of a pen gliding across a page as you write. Hi, my name is SHIRAJRODRIGUEZ, and I am a Jesus follower, a writer, entrepreneur, and lover of all things boho and books. In this podcast, I want to take you on a journey of discovering yourself, discovering God and your passions, and how to make your life beautiful and so full that it overflows into the lives of others. And over here, we are not about compartmentalizing life. Oh no. Over here, we talk about holistically taking your life and presenting it as a place where others can be blessed just by knowing you. Are you excited? I am. So snag your favorite mug of tea or a pen and paper and let's jump in. Because you're listening to Her Reading Life podcast. Hey friends, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Her Reading Life. What are some projects you've been undertaking lately? I've been trying my hand at watercolor lately. Not as consistently as I'd like, but every so often I've started dabbling with the paints in my free time, mostly working on flowers with the aid of YouTube and Pinterest. However, I'll be honest, sometimes my flowers have looked so unlike the photograph or video I'm imitating, it's embarrassing. Mine have looked like a crude, scrawled copy of the original. Honestly, isn't it disappointing when that happens? Usually in these cases, I do one of two things. Number one, try again. Or number two, take a step back and try something easier. Sometimes I do both, and I've found this helps me immensely. Because honestly, these two options are not exclusive to learning watercolor. This is something I have used for everything, from baking complex recipes to writing 50-page projects to reading challenging books. And today, I'm specifically going to be diving into how to read challenging books, like classics. You know, those big tomes you want to read but just can't get around to actually doing it. You see, these delightful but definitely daunting fellows hold so much beauty in them. They have the power to transform your mind and to teach you so very much. They're books that have stood the test of time and often books that inspired some of the most influential people in the world. But I know by experience that finding these gold nuggets can often feel like looking for hidden treasure on a pirate map. So, to really hone in on this and make it easy for you, I have 3 tips when it comes to reading classics and starting off. Tip number 1, start small. This is where stepping back and trying something easier comes in. When you're jumping into a new genre for the first time, do me a favor. Please resist the temptation to dive into the biggest and the chunkiest of the bunch. Save yourself the pain and start small. Even if you have to start with a children's classic, that is so much better than jumping into War and Peace. Believe me, you'll end up shooting yourself in the foot when you set such an incredibly high bar to start with. I would recommend starting with a children's classic, ideally, because they tend to be short and engaging. However, if children's lit is just not your thing, you can start with short stories or short novels, of which there are several good ones. For instance, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a short but riveting novel that doesn't take more than 4 hours to read. This gives you motivation to keep reading and also gives a very achievable goal. See, the problem with choosing long books like Les Miserables or War and Peace is that they can take a long time to read and are sometimes slow. This means your goal is further off and takes more work to get there. When you're jumping into a new genre, think of it in terms of hiking. You don't start by hiking up the Himalayas. You start by getting your body used to walking through uneven terrains during shorter distances, and then you work up. In the same way, I've found that the best way to start is to give yourself something short, achievable, and delightful, so that you get a lovely feeling of accomplishment and enjoyment when you finish. Pick books that you can finish in 1 or 2 days, typically books that are under 6 hours if you're listening to an audiobook, and work up from there. Tip number 2, start interesting. In addition to short, try to get books that are interesting. More specifically, riveting. There are a lot of books that are short but abstract and difficult to read despite their size. I'm not saying they're bad. On the contrary, I personally love these books. They are just not the best to start off reading. For example, Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse is a gorgeous, wondrous masterpiece telling the story of a family and their friends exploring the meaning of life as they go about the everyday, as they stay at their beach residence. However, this can be an extremely confusing read, because I'm not kidding when I say that throughout the whole novel there is no plot. Thus, I can hardly recommend this for first-timers. You'll probably be tempted to drop the book altogether several times. Does that mean the book is bad? Not at all. It's a spectacular book that's a complex philosophical work. In contrast, a novel like The Scarlet Pimpernel is so much easier to dive into. It is both short and riveting, and recounts the story of a young French woman who marries an English aristocrat during the French Revolution. She accidentally endangers his life when she gives some forbidden information to the revolutionist Chauvelin, who used to be a friend of hers, in order to save her brother's life. I highly recommend starting with this one. I remember when I first read this, I couldn't put it down. I really did wonder where this book had been all my life. Tip number 3, start listening. Sometimes the hardest thing about classic lit is the rhythm and style. Some truly incredible stories are often hard for us to get at because we're just not used to the language and style it's written in. And that's okay, you'll get used to it, I promise. It can just take a little while and some degree of patience. However, something that can often make things a lot easier is a narrator. A really good narrator can make a huge difference in a book. I remember when I was reading Wuthering Heights years ago and had a crack at it by reading. I didn't get very far. And when I mean I didn't get far, I mean I read a couple of paragraphs before giving up. Once I heard the narrator perform it, though, especially with two voices playing different characters, it suddenly made a lot more sense. I strongly recommend doing this for Victorian novels and Austen novels, because they are sometimes the harder sort of books that really become easier to listen to, in my opinion. Bonus tip: find a buddy. Although reading is a delightful way to spend time alone, I find that it's twice as enjoyable when I read with others. You see, books unite people in a unique way. They open doors to explore ideas and people and places and things about people that you never knew. They create intimate connections because you feel as though you've experienced the same thing and gone through the emotions in the books together. Think of the wonderful feeling of finding someone else who loved visiting Narnia through C.S. Lewis's books, or someone who is just as crazy about Mr. Darcy as you are. Books build community. And community is often the key to going through difficult books. Together, you can cheer each other on and look forward to gossiping about the characters and disagreeing about them and reliving your favorite scenes together. So, find a buddy or 2 or 3 and experience the books together. Text them, DM them, set out a time frame in which to read together, and then set out meeting dates to get together and chat about them. You will have so much fun and so many memorable discussions. I know I've enjoyed every minute of my discussions with friends over books. If you're interested in finding community, I actually have a very exciting project I'm working on, and you can sign up on my waiting list today to get updates about its release. Just click the link in the show notes below to join. So here are some of my favorite audiobooks. Most of these I've heard through my library's online collections through Hoopla and Overdrive/Libby. The first of these amazing audiobooks is Great Gatsby, read by Anthony Held. Great Gatsby tells the story of a young man named Gatsby who chases the woman of his dreams, yet learns the hard lesson that you can't really change the past. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to Anthony Held's version of this book, which he imbues with so much energy and humor. I enjoyed listening to his version so much because I laughed at parts that I think I wouldn't have found funny otherwise, and at the same time sympathized with the characters, and Anthony Held just really brought everything to life, and the characters became so vivid with his narration. I know some friends that honestly found the book a little bit tedious, and so I recommended the audiobook to them, and hopefully they'll enjoy it. I haven't heard back from them yet, but I really hope that they'll enjoy this book more as an audiobook, because it is definitely an experience for sure. Pride and Prejudice, read by Kate Kellgren, is another one of my absolute favorites. However, unfortunately, this is a version which I have not been able to find anywhere else besides Libby and Hoopla. If you have any luck in finding it, please let me know. Kate Kellgren does an incredible job at bringing Austen to life, and she creates an unforgettable experience as you listen. I honestly did not find anyone else who captured the spirit of Austen, who captured Mrs. Bennet and Elizabeth and Jane and Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley and all the beautiful cast of characters that Austen presents with so much energy and grace as Kate Kellgren, and I truly loved listening to her. I've listened to that version so many times by now. It's absolutely wonderful. And it's crazy because I think she actually passed away some time ago, and I'm still listening to her audiobook because it was that good, and I enjoyed listening to her voice so much, and she still, in a way, is living beyond the grave through her audiobooks. Another one that I definitely can't forget is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, read by William Jeffreys. This is such a hilarious, swashbuckling adventure. Huck Finn is one of my absolute favorite novels, and I've probably listened to this version 2 or 3 times by now. In this novel, a little boy by the name of Huckleberry Finn runs away downriver with a slave named Jim, who is escaping to freedom. Along the way, they have the wildest adventures, running into a feuding family, a shipwreck, and even 2 con men who claim to be a duke and a king. William Jeffreys does a spectacular job on this, and will definitely make you hold your sides laughing as you listen. He really brings Huck Finn's voice to life, because this is in first-person narration, so you'll hear Huck narrating all these events from his perspective, and it's hilarious because William Jeffreys really does make his voice sound like a little boy, a little 13-year-old boy. And it is so funny. You definitely do not want to miss out on this one. The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, read by Ian Holm, is another one of my favorites. This is a quintessential Robert Louis Stevenson read that I honestly couldn't put down the first time I read this. Staged as a murder mystery, a group of citizens dig into the mysterious origins of a cruel man who roams the English city at night, breaking the law and wreaking havoc. What they end up finding is eerier than anything they could ever imagine, and Ian Holm brings this to life so well. Honestly, I love it when actors narrate novels. They really bring everything to life and take it as a performance, not just as a reading, which is so exciting. And I listened to this, I think, in one sitting. So either over 1 day or 2 days. I don't remember exactly, but I know that I could not stop listening to it. It was so riveting and so good, and this performance really brought it to life. The Giver by Ron Rifkin. Yes, this is a children's classic, but it is so worth reading as an adult. In The Giver, a boy named Jonas is chosen to be the next giver, the person who remembers all the memories of his entire society, in order to allow people to live in their utopian society. He soon realizes, however, that his utopia is not so golden as people make it out to be, and he's determined to do something about it. Ron Rifkin brings so much innocence and gentleness to this strange and sometimes difficult story. I highly recommend giving this one a listen because Ron Rifkin brings so much gentleness and beauty to the story that I feel like can sometimes be lost in the reading. And even though the narrator in the book, like if you're reading, is sensitive, it just brings this Jonas's character to another level to hear this rendition of this book. I personally really enjoyed listening to it, and I hope that you will too. So these are some of my tried and true favorite audiobooks that I've listened to myself and loved. And each of these narrators does a fantastic job and brings the story to life, so you're completely invested in the story. Some other favorites of mine include The Scarlet Pimpernel, Billy Budd, Little Women, Treasure Island, Wrinkle in Time, Black Beauty, and The Chronicles of Narnia. All of these are books that are short and that you can dig into a little bit more quickly and really work up your appetite. Work up those reading muscles until they get to where you can read big books like War and Peace. I hope that this episode has blessed you and encouraged you and gotten you excited to start reading again. And if you're interested in starting another genre that maybe isn't the classic literature or something like that, definitely use this same method. Start small, work up to where you want to go. And this has worked for me every time, and I hope that this helps you immensely as well. Until next time, friends, keep living, giving, and repeating. Yay! You did it! I'm giving you a lovely big virtual hug because you just finished another episode of Her Reading Life podcast. If you'd like to access all the wonderful links I mentioned in this episode, visit my website at bio.site/ShiraJRodriguez. That's bio.site/ShiraJRodriguez. There you can access my blog posts, resources, and so much more. Also, check out my Instagram page for more inspirational content and join my email list for insider secrets and exclusive updates on special events. The links are in the description box below. Also, if you could take a minute and leave a review for this podcast, that would be amazing. We're able to reach so many more people because of your reviews and ratings. I can't wait to chat with you next time, friends. Keep living, giving, and repeating.